Welcome back, subscribers, and welcome new viewers. And today I'm going to be reading from my Saturn book, Saturn in aspect to Mercury, and this is natal. And I want to thank Tashana and Jake for me being able to do this video, because this doesn't just help them, it helps each and every other viewer out there, all of you who have those same natal aspects. So thank you, both of you. And I want to thank each and every one of you who have subscribed, who like and share my videos, because that helps my whole channel to circulate out to more and more individuals who are needing this information just like you. And I want to do a quick thank you for all of you who have donated and who are able to and desire to support this channel so that I can continue to present this information and get this information out to as many individuals as I possibly can. And so let's get to reading here. And this is especially for the hard aspects, which have to do with Saturn and Mercury in your natal wheel that are conjunct, which means right next to each other, or opposite each other, or square each other. Okay. And I hope this is okay. It looks like I have enough light. The sun is going in and out today. So, Saturn in aspect to Mercury. Mercury in aspect to Saturn is traditionally considered to concur with profundity of thought, a shrewd, careful, and thorough mind, canniness in business matters, and on the more negative side, a tendency to depression and gloominess, narrowness and rigidity of viewpoint, and a propensity for prevarication or evasiveness. There seems to be some association of Mercury-Saturn contacts, particularly the hard aspects, with speech difficulties, such as stammering or stuttering, and also with defects of hearing. The close conjunctions, squares, and oppositions of Mercury and Saturn are also said to have some connection with dullness or lack of intelligence. In general, however, Mercury-Saturn contacts are considered to be reasonably easy to deal with, although not particularly important unless other planets are involved in the configuration, or unless one or the other planet is on an angle. It is possible that Mercury-Saturn contacts assume major importance only at a particular stage of the individual's development. That is, when he learns how to reason. Not everyone makes use of this capacity. Mercury-Saturn contacts are not productive of the kind of stress and emotional frustration which is more typical of Mars, Venus, or the Moon in aspect to Saturn. Mercury being symbolic of cold reason and common sense, and being inclined towards matters of business or commerce, as well as intellectual pursuits, tends to blend agreeably with Saturn regardless of the nature of the aspect. It is fairly obvious why a combination of these two planets should be associated with tact, shrewdness, and diplomacy. There are many people, however, who labor under the less agreeable side of these aspects, and this seems to be more in evidence with the more intellectual type of temperament. Frequently, there is much frustration felt in the area of communication and feelings of inadequacy about one's mental capacities. These feelings, if amplified enough, are often at the root of physical expressions such as stammering. The ease with which this difficulty in speech is helped through such therapeutic methods as hypnotherapy strongly points to the psychological origin of the difficulty. Like Saturn in the third house, Mercury-Saturn contacts often suggest the appearance of dullness when the situation is actually one of fear and inhibition. The curious expression of the chronic and uncontrollable liar is also one of the less attractive facets of Mercury-Saturn. But Saturn remains true to form here in that there must be present a reasonable degree of intelligence, sensitivity, and complexity of character in order for such distortion or overcompensation to exist. Often it is the person who experiences the more difficult face of Mercury-Saturn who in the end is able to make sense, I apologize. Well, maybe make sense, though that word came out, so for some of you maybe that is the case. But it actually says, who in the end is able to make use of the opportunity for mental development and illumination which Saturn offers. Mercury is a highly important planet, symbolizing a highly important function because he represents the instrument of communication of the birth chart's potential to the environment, and likewise the instrument of assimilating data from the environment. In spite of the fact that many esoteric schools of devotional nature teach us that the mind is the slayer of the real, it appears that man can make no sense either of his experiences or of himself unless he develops the faculty of understanding and discrimination. Otherwise, he is a creature of instinct and is no different from the animals. No matter how strong, able, gifted, or developed an individual may be, he cannot communicate his gifts to others, nor can he absorb understanding from them if he has not developed the use of his mind. The well-worn maxim that energy follows thought is nevertheless a valid one, and all things begin on the plane of thought as a basic idea before they become reality on the mundane plane. This is not so abstruse a concept as it seems. Mercury symbolizes the concrete mind, and without him there can be no comprehension of the meaning of an experience because there is no way out of the sea of emotional involvement which cloaks the experience. There's also no self-understanding because Mercury symbolizes the power of analysis and discrimination. He rules two signs and therefore governs two houses of the birth chart. It is a mistake to underestimate his importance. In the average individual who is developing his mental nature, it is the information available from the environment which helps to shape one's ideas and orientation. When this source of information is closed off, as it often is when Saturn aspects Mercury, the individual must then rely on his inner perception and on his own experience to develop his attitudes and ideas about life. This often takes a long time, but can be a more valid means of understanding life because it is firsthand. Mercury-Saturn aspects suggest a feeling of mental inadequacy or uncertainty, and this is often aggravated in childhood by the parental attitude of assuming that a child cannot think for himself because he is a child, and that any independent thought or idea which conflicts with the wider opinions of his elders needs to be stifled. And for those of you that don't know, my Mercury is in Aries in the 12th house, and it's conjunct by the house placement because my Saturn is also in the 12th house, but it's in Pisces. While the child will usually withdraw from this kind of experience, he will also often pay the price later by mistrusting his own mental competence. Often the Mercury-Saturn person will do poorly in school not because he is stupid or unoriginal, but because he often believes that he is stupid and will in turn work so slowly in such fear of making an error that his intelligence is underestimated by those around him. And absolutely I was, because both me being in the 12th house and those energies being in the 12th house, I was scared to death of anyone, of being called on by a teacher or having any spotlight of any kind on me. I was terrified. And you couldn't get 2 words out of me. It was very, very difficult for me to speak in public or even to speak to someone one-on-one. I just couldn't do it. Not then. Mercury-Saturn may equally often become pedantic and incline toward overcompensation by placing great emphasis on intellectual accomplishment. But it is usually labored accomplishment without the natural ease and grace of the mercurial temperament. The individual may, in childhood, have difficulty in articulating because of shyness and fear, which may in turn be interpreted as lack of interest. He may express the characteristic Saturnian taciturnity, masking a sensitive and deeply thoughtful temperament with habitual silence. There is the likelihood, typical of difficult Saturnian aspects, of a I think it's maybe vicious circle, perpetuating itself, since his fear aggravates his frustration and incompetence, which is in turn aggravates his fear. Mercury-Saturn contacts frequently are connected with either an incomplete or interrupted education or an exaggerated academic career. The practical lessons of everyday life, where there is no competition with faster or more fluent minds, is often more appealing to the Mercury-Saturn temperament, and there is so often a compensatory development of great faculty at earthy matters. Sometimes the individual is pragmatic and unimaginative, largely because the realm of abstract thought is frightening to him. He may feel inept when confronted with a more carefully educated or intellectual type of temperament, often becoming cynical and sardonic. Sardonic? I'm sorry, I don't know what that word is. Sardonic, as a defense against what he unconsciously fears as a more competent mind. It is generally difficult for Mercury-Saturn to learn anything in any way except by his own effort, whether he is the more taciturn type or is compensating by a more loquacious temperament. He will rarely trust a piece of information unless he has actually experienced it and made sure that he understands it thoroughly. This tendency is acceptable by our present standards because it is in line with the scientific method, although Mercury-Saturn is inclined to lose the meaning of an experience by his insistence on pinning the experience to a board. The subtle and tenuous bridge which leads from the intellect to the intuitive perception of meaning behind an idea or a fact is blocked by Saturn. And often the most difficult side of Mercury-Saturn is the loss of real meaning and genuine understanding. Facts are comprehended and learning may be impeccable, but the life behind the structure is lost. The presence of a strong Mercury-Saturn contact on the birth chart seems to suggest the opportunity for self-education in a deeper sense than simple accumulation of practical knowledge through experience. Saturn symbolizes that motivation within an individual which seeks the bare bones of meaning buried within the layers of form, and this urge for discovery of the intrinsic truth or meaning of any experience is directed into the realm of knowledge under the influence of Mercury-Saturn contacts. Understanding an idea, a feeling, or a thing in the ordinary sense generally means identifying and categorizing that idea, feeling, or thing. It is then assigned to its proper mental compartment in the contents of consciousness, labeled correctly for future use. A quick observation inward at the mechanics of this process of assimilating information usually reveals this rapid network of association and compartmentalization of experience which occurs constantly throughout the day and throughout the life of a human being. Experiences have meaning to the average individual according to a framework of pre-established associations. It is by this means that the thinking individual evaluates life. This framework is generally drawn not from one's own experience, which must necessarily be limited, but rather from other people's experiences, which we then adopt as our own. The meaning of an experience in itself is lost. It is only what the experience evokes within the group that gives it its identity. It is the emotional associations which our color ideas, when the webs of illusion are stripped away and we are able to perceive the mechanism at work. The ideas of many people are opinions rather than ideas. And Mercury becomes a mere accumulator of other people's values rather than a creative instrument in his own right. Most people have opinions, and these are easily acquired and freely given. But few people know how to think creatively or to build an original framework of associations based not on emotional value judgments, but on the intrinsic meaning of each unique, separate experience. This is real freedom of thought, which forges the bridge between the intellectual and intuitive faculties, the only instruments we now possess to give us a glimpse of the totality of the human psyche. The person with a strong Mercury-Saturn aspect labors slowly, accumulating what to him is truth, because he cannot acquire it in the ordinary way. The free-flowing channels of communication of opinions are closed to him to a greater or lesser degree, and he is forced to build his own framework. So what that's saying to me is all of us with, especially these hard Mercury Saturn aspects, is that we do it on our own. We are forced to go through experiences which give us the truth because of how we have experienced it and what we have experienced, and because we ourselves went through it on our own and therefore found the truth because of that. Wow. Firsthand. We didn't hear it from anyone else. He may be earthbound and apparently unimaginative, but he generally has a keen sense of illusion. And the sensitivity he experiences toward the delicate relativity of truth may send him violently into the opposite behavior pattern, so that he becomes a compulsive liar. Whether he consciously seeks a framework of knowledge which is sound and real, or whether he gives up in despair because the effort is too great and becomes adept at the manipulation of opinion, which is the gift of the good politician, he must probably endure the constant chastisement of Saturn, who reminds him that nothing is true and nothing is false, but that there is a fine, tight rope between these opposites, which leads eventually to the opening up of the intuitive faculty. Mercury-Saturn contacts are subtle and worth further investigation because they provide an opportunity for a completely different use of the mind. That is outstanding. Rather than a tool for categorization, the one-pointed mind, trained in concentration and the power to perceive meaning behind form, can be directed inward to explore the darker recesses of the psyche. It is the only means by which we can begin to apprehend this aspect of ourselves, although the mind, as it is developed in this way, is not an instrument of evaluation. It is a detached observer. It is only when the mind is full of opinions that Mercury becomes the slayer of the real. Perception of the reality of values bears its own kind of pain. And although it is not personal in the way that emotional frustration is personal. This is an important contact for the person who is beginning to be mentally rather than emotionally polarized. When there are no longer any familiar landmarks for what defines truth and what defines falsehood, the individual must search more deeply within himself to determine what is true or false for him alone. That's what this aspect is for. That's what this aspect is for. In my opinion, I'd love to hear what all of you think or believe or see. In the acceptance of this responsibility lies a great deal of freedom. There you have it. Wow. Okay, so if any of you would like a written copy, just send me an email and I will email it back to you. And if you have any questions, any comments, I'm always open to answering and reading anything that you have to say. So, I also would like to let all of you know that any of you that are interested in a natal interpretation, for me to do that for you, to do a written natal interpretation, I would love to. So just let me know and send me an email. My email address is thecreativewoman369@gmail.com, and it's in the drop-down box below this video and all of my videos. And if you don't know the information that I will need, your birth information, that's also provided in the drop-down box below this video and all of my videos. Okay, well, I hope this helped, and until next time.